Oh,
Hello, gentlemen.
oh,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm fine.
Nice to,
We are
nice
fine,
to
thank
see
you.
Great.
You're Vadim, right?
Yeah. Well, Vadim hasn't joined yet. He hasn't connected so far. I don't see him, so he probably hasn't connected. But I think he will join. Maybe I'll phone him. But,
Then you're Piotr, right?
yeah. I'm Piotr.
Okay, great. So let me introduce the guy on my left. He's Orkhan, the head of the Institute, STRATI, we call it, and me, Fuad Mukhtarov, senior fellow of the Institute.
Great. Nice to see you, Mr. Orkhan. Nice to see you too.
Thank you. Okay, this is not just an accidental. You see my face mask. This is that compulsory item of our daily life for about 3 months already, and we're not allowed to go out without face mask. So let's start with this topic.
This respect,
yeah,
in this respect, we are very liberal.
You're liberal, so you're not made to wear face masks?
No face masks, no prohibitions when it comes to movement, to travel. So just there are some internal rules within some enterprises, state offices, banks, sometimes shops. Well, just on the level of internal rules, workers have to wear, for example, masks, gloves, and similar things. Apart from that, just recommendations, just some organized ways of distancing. For example, floor marks. Floor is marked with some stripes, so that people are informed not to trespass.
Yeah, social distance.
Stripes. So just these sorts of controlling the pandemic, but no other measures. Okay. So the most liberal approach in the world. One of the most, probably not the most.
That's fantastic. Piotr, the reason I started from COVID-19 is just to clarify the reason behind Belarus' approach to international calls to take precautionary measures. So my question is, what makes Belarus different from, say, from the rest of its neighbors, from Europe, from Russia? The whole region is covered by pandemic threat. Everyone seems hearing some orders from different places. People are not believing, are raising doubts, so on and so on. But Belarus is holding its football championship. Yeah. Everything as usual. The game has never changed. And the second part of my question, even Belarus fixed the date of next presidential elections, August 9, 2020, right? So
right.
The floor is yours, please.
Well, when it comes to reaction to the pandemic, well, many point to economical reasons that the authorities and Lukashenko in particular feared economic collapse, and it would bode bad before the presidential elections for him. But, well, I'm not sure about this reason. Of course, it was relevant, it is relevant, but I think my feeling is that maybe psychological factors were even more important here, that Lukashenko doesn't like emergency situations. He likes to rule according to the way he is accustomed to. Well, in an authoritarian way, such iron fist way, but no emergencies, no extreme extremalities. So this is my hypothesis. Maybe correct, maybe not very correct, but why I think this can be relevant here for the following reasons, that lockdowns or harsh quarantine is rather logical for authoritarian regimes, and many authoritarian regimes, so to speak, benefited from lockdowns in terms of strengthening their power, in terms of seizing more control over society. But Lukashenko, unlike many other authoritarian prone leaders, didn't want that. He chose such a liberal approach. So the time will show to what extent the time will show to what extent such harsh lockdowns introduced in many countries, and especially democratic countries, would benefit society, because we now see how many side effects the lockdowns had. And in the long-term perspective, it may come out that such mild reactions, such liberal reactions to the pandemic might be more reasonable. So it's probably too early to say it for sure. But but currently we see that many researchers show that the threat from coronavirus is less than previously estimated, that it's not, for example, 3.4% of mortality, but just 0.5 and even less. So as researchers proceed, as observation on lockdowns, on side effects proceed, so re-estimations also have to take place. So, and as I said, in the long-term perspective, it may turn out that such liberal approach like Lukashenko's might prove more reasonable. So this is what we have to take into account. But linking this aspect to the presidential elections. Well, currently at this moment, Lukashenko's reaction to pandemic plays rather negatively in terms of his position. So sociological surveys show that Belarusians are critical to how authorities deal with the pandemic. Well, of course, society in many countries and in democratic countries, is very critical, is very emotional to these aspects, to how government deal with pandemic. But current current reaction of society is to a great extent emotional. in a few weeks, maybe in 2 months, emotions will alleviate, will come down, and maybe this reaction of the authorities of Lukashenko in particular will be re-evaluated and probably in the positive direction. So this is my estimation, my prognosis. So, of course, the authoritarian power still takes place, and with all the consequences of this. So we have to distinguish two things: Lukashenko's ranking, Lukashenko's popularity in society, and Lukashenko's ability to ascertain his victory or so-called victory. So these two things are rather independent. But of course, Lukashenko and his entourage are interested in popularity, because, well, it makes difference if you falsify elections, but at the same time you have at least 50% of popularity, or at least 40% of popularity. And if you rig elections, falsify elections, win them, but you have just 30 or maybe 20, or maybe, as one political scientist suggests, just 17% of popularity. So this is different. There is difference. This is some signal for the system, for the officials, state officials, that, well, Lukashenko won elections, but in reality he was weak. So this is not a good, not a comfortable situation for Lukashenko to ensure his elections while having a rather low popularity.
Yeah, but the way he tries to portray himself and his team as a whole, for us as an outsider, seems he's in full charge of the whole situation in the country. And even we, from time to time, hear very strong anti-Russian rhetorics. Even a few days ago, he during the victory parade, or before or after that, said, you see, Russia sells gas to Germany for $71, but to Belarus for around $200, 170 something.
Yeah.
What is your take on such anti-Russian rhetoric when he's closely connected with the Kremlin?
Well, when it comes to his anti-Russian rhetoric, it started appearing not today and not yesterday. It has a long history. So Lukashenko is known as a rather pro-Russian politician, because of the fact that first he reintroduced Russian language as the second language, or in fact the main language, official language in Belarus. De facto, de jure they are equal, but de facto Russian language prevails. And the policy of Russification of education system, of establishment, state officials, and well, parliament, government. So this is well, to a great extent, Lukashenko's policy. And another thing, that in the late 90s, he was by the main proponent of Russia-Belarus reintegration, creating a union state, and maybe creating some sort of Eastern Slavic Commonwealth, or maybe Pan-Slavic Commonwealth. So for this reasons, yes, Lukashenko, that there are some reasons to perceive him as pro-Russian. But as early as 2002, that is more than 18 years ago, Lukashenko started to apply very harsh rhetoric to the Kremlin, especially to Putin. Well, many other governments, like for example Polish or Lithuanian, who are known for so-called anti-Russian and anti-Soviet sentiment, maybe didn't come as far as Lukashenko in his rhetoric. No, but we have to remember that, well, Lukashenko is a very spontaneous person, often emotional, and the Kremlin, especially Putin, even if they don't like such a behavior, such rhetoric, but they have accustomed to it. So there is nothing new in anti-Russian rhetoric. What is new? Well, what has been new for several years is that this anti-Russian rhetoric is combined with repeated pro-independence and pro-Belarusian in terms of strengthening Belarusian identity, national Belarusian identity. And making some rapprochement gestures towards the West. So when we combine these two things, anti-Russian rhetoric, some steps towards strengthening national identity and in part strengthening Belarusian language and rapprochement with the West. So this gives a somewhat new picture, not radically new, but well, something is happening now. So well, and you also mentioned about one image aspect of Lukashenko's rule, that is his imaging as having full control over the situation and in part over the pandemic situation. Yes, this is an integral part, a very strong part of Lukashenko's image. He has liked for 26 years to position himself as having full control over the situation, and well, this pandemic situation is not an exception. Well, this rhetoric continues.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Belarus, from where we stand, is a very close nation, a very close country to Azerbaijan. And if we go back to history, we can never trace any collusion, any confrontation between Azerbaijan and Belarus, even when we were part of the Soviet Union. And when we became independent nations, I know some positive examples when Belarus was cornered by Putin over gas debts. He contacted Aliyev, and Aliyev immediately transferred about 2,000, sorry, I don't know exactly, but he repaid Belarus debt, and which was refunded later. What is the view from your perspective? How do you see relations between Belarus and Azerbaijan, and what went wrong? What can be improved, and what can think tanks like yours and ours play to this end?
Mhm. Well, one obvious reason for this positive relations that you mentioned are economic ones, and especially weapon trade. So Azerbaijan is a good partner for trading on arms devices for weapon.
Yeah.
But of course, this is not the only reason. Of course, such a geopolitical or just simply political reason that Lukashenko, like leadership of Azerbaijan, well, they maintain more or less friendly relationships with Russia, but they both are interested in being independent from the Kremlin. So to ascertain some resilience towards the Kremlin's unjust well, demands, interventions. So, and I think also psychological ones. So Lukashenko perceives well, both Aliyevs as his as a person with whom he can agree on many things, whom he can understand and be understood, and so forth. Of course, it is challenging to maneuver between Azerbaijan as an important economical partner, political partner, and building relationships with Armenia, the country being part of Eurasian Economic Union and being very closely linked to Russia for many reasons, and well, with better or worse success, Lukashenko is maneuvering, is making regular reverences, advances to the Armenian government. But by the way, what can be attractive in Azerbaijan, that's relative stability, as compared to, for example, Armenia, which is constantly changing, constantly in some sort of revolution of looking for new ways of organizing their own internal affairs. So Lukashenko likes some stability, predictability. So, for example, Chinese, such a big country, government, or Azerbaijan country with such at least relatively stable, despite being involved in military conflict, is a more sympathetic partner.
Yeah,
Just for such psychological reasons.
Let's invite Vadim as well. Sorry.
Oh, something wrong with.
Yeah, he joined us, I think.
Okay, he's
Okay,
joining.
now I hear.
Okay. Piotr, what I want to ask you about the August 2020 presidential elections.
Hi, Vadim.
Hi, Vadim.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, everybody.
And head of STRATI, and our senior research fellow, Fuad Mukhtarov, is creating you.
Okay. I want to give time to Vadim to just join in and listen to what we discussed already. And Piotr, I'm very keen on upcoming presidential elections. Belarus leader is going for the sixth time to the presidential race, and but when I researched not candidates, but hopefuls for presidency, I just saw one name, the head of pro-Russian bank, and some independent media outlets portray him as a strong candidate who can beat Lukashenko in the upcoming presidential elections. And reading that, I thought maybe he's the Kremlin man, or if he's the Kremlin man, how can Lukashenko let him be a strong candidate along with him in the coming elections, given the chilling relations between the Minsk and Moscow? Your take, please, and I would like to ask both of your opinions. Yeah.
Well, my opinion, well, that this person you are talking about, that is Viktor Babariko,
yeah.
Well, he of course has got multiple links in Russia, in high places, probably in the Kremlin too. But I don't think that he is the Kremlin man in terms of being a sort of puppet. So his personality is completely different. This is an independent personality. Well, this is to a great extent pragmatic, rational person. I believe that he is a Belarusian patriot, having his own vision of Belarusian, his diagnosis of the problems in Belarus. He has got a holistic assessment, his own holistic. I mean that not only some sector of society, but well, some big picture of what is going on, what has been going on in Belarus. Well, as of now, it's difficult to assess for his diagnosis, how far it's correct, maybe to some extent wrong, and so forth. Too little we know about his program, about his exact diagnosis, just what he has been saying during multiple interviews before he announced his start in the presidential elections. But anyway, it's no doubt that he is a very interesting and probably unexpected figure, both for the opposition and the authorities for Lukashenko's regime. The prognosis that he might beat Lukashenko is almost for sure wrong, for the obvious situation that well, the process of election, of counting votes is completely controlled, and well, even if he gets more votes than Lukashenko, we will never know it. But well, if we ask hypothetical question, if it's possible that Babariko gets more votes than Lukashenko, well, it is possible. So I believe that he can get more votes. As of now, he is very popular in, well, so one internet voting shows that he is quite popular. But by the way, one radical figure is even more popular. So at this moment, in that part of society that is critical towards Lukashenko, such more radical and simplistic messages are more popular. So Babarika's approach is more sophisticated. So this is his great plus, but in terms of marketing, in terms of getting popularity, that can be some minus. But nevertheless, even in spite of this minus, I believe he has chances to be quite popular.
Okay.
So this is my opinion. Maybe Vadim will.
Yeah, maybe I can add something about Viktor Babarika. Yeah, of course. Before last days, before he came to election process, he is the head of the Belgazprom Bank, and yeah, this bank is with a Russian capital, Gazprom capital, and yeah, if we just look for this point, he can look like a pro-Russian candidate. But if we look a little bit for Mr. Babarika personally, as his previous activities, about his previous interview, he exactly not looks like a pro-Russian candidate, because maybe he do a lot of things for Belarusian culture, for Belarusian language, but especially for culture, especially if we look for his charity activity of his bank, he supports a lot for export a lot for Belarusian culture, and even sometimes it looks strange when how it's possible that Gazprom Bank spent a lot of money for Belarusians. So from this, and that's why I think that Babarika is a not pleasant candidate for authorities, dangerous candidate, because from one hand, yeah, he can we can look for him as a great Russian businessman on a top position in a top Russian business. From another hand, Viktor Babarika maybe is the most popular businessman in the pro-national circles of society. And that's why now we say that, yeah, Mr. Babarika collect 10,000 people into his initiative group to nominate them as a candidate. It's the biggest number of people. More only Alexander Lukashenko is 11,000 persons. Another candidates more or less. So
sometimes does one person.
Okay,
yeah, but
I'll come to other candidates. So there are not two candidates. I think at least 16 hopefuls are standing for the post of president. And among them, there are opposition candidates. And we know, like in other Soviet nations, former Soviet nations, opposition is disintegrated, is not united. And many believe the reason for their defeat is their disintegration, their inability to unite and to come up with a single strong candidate against the incumbent presidents. Tell me, please, about your country, about opposition in Belarus. Are there any, will they be led to stand in the elections? And how do you assess their real chances, real opportunities to struggle against the Belarus president?
But the question is what it means about the opportunities, because if it means that opportunities that be a winner on these elections and be a president after 2 months, I think really nobody believes in that, even in candidates. Of course, some of them, they should, of course, you can't go to a candidate and say, of course, I'm lose. Nobody vote for you, nobody support you. So they should talk that it's possible, but from my perspective, I think that everybody understood that, yeah, it's not possible in these elections. First of all, because of the specific of how they collect votes, but these elections, of course, the possibility for somebody to be more to take some publicity, to be more visible, to collect some persons who can support them. And for somebody like Viktor Babarika, for example, as we talked before, is a chance to a little bit change the representation, because now people know Viktor Babarika is well-known in a charity, in a business, and maybe now after these elections, people also know him as a politician. So from my perspective, most of candidates, they just use this campaign is a possibility to just possibility for a better representation, because in an authoritarian country, a presidential campaign is maybe a unique possibility, just once in the 5 years, when you can be like a really when you can see something like a public political life.
Okay, Piotr.
If we were asked hypothetical questions, that if we have democratic way of election process, that is fair counting of votes, and well, the elections are organized fairly. So who might be a good candidate for winning? Well, at this moment, I couldn't call such a candidate. Well, we have three, I would say three and plus one emerging groups, which that each of them has their own strong and weak sides. One such nationalistic and to a great extent pro-European. Well, traditionally it's pro-European, but the ideology often collides with nowadays European mainstream. But anyway, so-called nationalistic wave, nationalistic part of opposition. So, for example, Pavel Severinets, co-chair of Christian Democrats, Belarusian Christian Democracy. So in many circles, he is strongly supported. During the initial stage of so-called opposition primaries, he was doing quite well. Later he resigned, and then this initiative disintegrated for many additional reasons. But anyway, if given that there are free media and fair counting of votes, one might expect that he would gain large popularity. Who knows? Another group is what I call sociological opposition. What I mean, this is somewhat strange word, but I mean that opposition that looks not at ideology, doesn't seek such coherent ideology, but looks at sociological surveys, what most Belarusians want. For example, good roads, some hospitals, some salaries, and so forth, and they try to build their company, their campaigns, their activity around these mundane, everyday needs of Belarusians. So, and Говори правду, tell the truth, such a campaign, tell the truth, and Tatiana Karatkevich, who ran campaign during the previous presidential elections, and the main opposition candidate currently, Andrei Dmitriev, that is another co-chair of the Tell the Truth or Говори правду campaign. So they have some chances, but well, of course, it's a mystery, like in case of nationalistic part of opposition, how it would evolve given free media and access to state television and fair elections. One more one more part of opposition is just protest opposition without clear ideology, but the main goal is just to abolish the regime, to overturn the regime, down with Lukashenko. This is the main ideology. So this is also strong, relatively strong, and Mr. Tikhanovsky is currently the main representative of this direction. He won't be a candidate, but his wife maybe. Well, and the emerging group, well, this is one known person, Viktor Babarika, but another person is Sergei Cherecheny, who became the head of Hromada. So it's ideologically it is social democrats, but well, he is not much linked to this social democratic ideology. He rather uses this party as a platform for his own agenda, just slightly connected to. So we have three such groups, and well, as of now, I can't say that one of them might have more chances given fair elections.
Okay. Then can we say the outcome of the presidential elections is a foregone conclusion? The winner is obvious. Just we need the right time to announce that Belarus has old and new president for another 5 years.
Well, it's too early. Not this year, most probably. Not this year. But well, it seems that Lukashenko and his entourage are thinking about power transition, about constitutional reform. So maybe during the next 5 years, some scenario will be drafted concerning the power transition. If nothing revolutionary doesn't happen, so maybe such a power transition will take place. But of course, much will depend on whether or not Lukashenko finds a risk-free variant for himself, that he will still stay in Belarus without any persecutions and with some impact on political processes. But this, as of now, probably even Lukashenko himself and his strategists don't know for sure what to do.
Vadim, do you have anything to say?
So yes, maybe if you look for elections from like a European or American perspective, it looks like if a winner is obvious, so why we should talk about it? But in Belarus, the specific is that political process and institutes have the same names as in the West, like elections, president, parliament, political parties have the same names, but sometimes it's a different sense. And it's about a presidential campaign. So yeah, this campaign, it's not about who win. Yeah, it's obvious, exactly. But it's about the political process, who go out, maybe somebody came new, as we see now, and it's a good instrument to look for like a political sphere, and also instrument for looking for what people thinking, because in a society like in Belarusian society, not so politicized during the whole year, but they're a little bit more. politicized during the political campaigns, like of course, especially as the presidential elections. So that's why it's a good way to look. For example, now we can see that mostly like people who are like a more intelligent, more pro-Western, like Facebook and Twitter party, we can say like it. Yeah, they can support people like a person like Babarika. For example, if you look about people who mostly using Odnoklassniki or Kontakte or whatever, I think it's not a place for Babarika, and it will surprise for him, because if you look for Facebook, looks like yeah, our Facebook can vote for them. So it's a good instrument to look what's happened, and maybe I can see during the selections we can also find some new faces which can be more active next 5-10 years.
Okay, great. Let me take you from Belarus to Europe. So you, like Azerbaijan, along with other former Soviet satellites, are members of the Eastern Partnership. But this initiative doesn't work, let's say openly, despite best efforts of some nations. I believe, and I know exactly, Moscow is against this initiative and overtly and covertly put pressure on nations wishing to establish close relations with the European Union. Tell me, please, how sincere is Belarus in bettering, improving relations with EU under this cover, and how much Belarus leader is ready to undertake on himself obligations put forward by EU?
Well, for Lukashenko and his entourage, relations with the West, with the European Union, and more broadly with the West are important for two main reasons: for economic ones, and for getting more independent from the Kremlin, from Russia, to have a larger field of maneuver, not to be so much dependent on Russia in terms of trade, of supplies, of import, export, and also politically. So, and this coincided with some processes within the European Union. First, that is some sort of resistance towards further expansion of the European Union. So this is one thing. Another thing, gradual decline in democracy in the global scale. So for these two reasons, the leadership of the European Union are not so prone to promote this idea of expansion, of inviting, of encouraging new members to join the European Union. For the second reason, because of decline in democracy and some internal problems with democracy, well, this promotion of democracy and human rights in other countries, in Belarus in part, is still relevant, but not so much as earlier. For example, at the end of 90s, in the first decade of this century, and the room has opened to just to talk about economical issues, about improvements in, for example, infrastructure, in functioning local governments, many other things that do not require any radical political changes from Belarusian regime. So this coincidence, so between the EU's stepping back from this human rights and democracy agenda to infrastructure and economic on the one hand, and Lukashenko's awareness of urgency, that is urgent to become more independent from Russia and reform to put Belarusian economy onto free market footing, coincided, and this gave some more or less stable collaboration, more or less stable consensus. Unlike it was, for example, in 2007 and 2008, when also was some sort of rapprochement between Belarus and the West and the EU. Currently, it lasts longer, and it most probably will last, regardless of what happens during the elections. Of course, it will not be very drastic, for example, some drastic beating or God forbid killing and so forth. Of course, it might worsen to a great extent, but even if it's not worse than previous elections, parliamentary or presidential, so collaboration will continue.
But out of blue, suddenly, U.S. State Secretary appeared in Belarus, and I think COVID-19, maybe I'm wrong, just stopped expansion of relations between Belarus and Washington. What do you think of it?
No, but we can say that COVID stopped relations between Belarus and Washington, because just a few days ago, we finally received the first oil from US. So it's and when Mr. Pompeo came to Minsk some months ago, they talked about this oil. So I think, and this like a practical example that Belarus and US relations, it's possible, and even is this really touchable topic. But of course, COVID, if we talk just practically, yeah, of course it stopped many contacts, because you simply just can't fly. But it's not a stop trend. So Belarusian, for example, foreign ministry and foreign ministry of Poland and other countries, they continue conversations in a Zoom format like we now. And but what can be a really problem is Belarusians, if we can say, like a special policy about COVID. When, for example, now when the Baltic countries, they're starting open their borders, and they're starting again air connections with Air Baltic. And when Estonia authorities say that they're not ready to continue like air connections with Belarus because of the COVID dangers. So Estonian government, they're not so happy about Belarusian COVID policy. And yeah, from like international relations, it's not the business. Belarus can do whatever like they want about epidemic policy, but Estonian government can say, okay, you can do whatever you want, but we're not ready to open border for you because you're dangerous. And it can be a problem. Of course, on a human level, it can be very bad. For example, we can imagine the picture after, for example, half of year, when many countries open the borders, but not for Belarus. It will be not so good for me or for other Belarusians. And of course, it will be not so good in international relations when Belarus, like if I can say, if Belarus be like a European leprosarium, it's not so good for foreign relations. But of course, the best scenario and more optimistic scenario is also possible.
Okay. Vadim, would you like to add anything, or can I ask next question, please? Piotr.
Probably next question.
Okay.
Vadim has answered. Right.
Yeah, thank you. We don't often, I can say, we do very rarely hear criticism of Moscow towards Minsk, Belarus, unlike, say, Ukraine, which is very often #1 topic on Solovyov's talk show on daily basis. Tell us, please, what's the reason, despite the fact that Belarus leader often goes against, at least we can describe it so, against Putin's policies vis-a-vis Belarus, I mean, in terms of economic relations, customs policy, relations with Europe, and so on, so on. I mean, the media doesn't often criticize Belarus and Belarus policies when it comes to relations with the Kremlin. What do you think?
So you are asking why the Kremlin is not so hostile, doesn't punish so much?
Not punish, but you know, let's say the Kremlin still preserves Big Brother status, and many former Soviet nations try to behave very, how to say it, very cautiously with the Kremlin boss. They fear something might happen. You say Ukraine has so many hot spots. Azerbaijan has Karabakh problem. Armenian leadership, the current Armenian government is under Kremlin just pressure. Moldova has the same problem. The Central Asian nations have more or less similar problems, maybe except for Kazakhstan. So, yeah, from this point of view, the media, Belarus is not on the radar of Russian media, which seems very, very critical. Not seems, but in reality it is very critical of Ukrainian policies.
So, well, Belarus receives rather scant attention in Russian media. Well, first of all, because of its relative significance, it is not perceived as a very significant, as a hot problem for Russians. Which also sociological surveys in Russia show that, well, just not many Russians are interested in what is going on between Belarus and Russia. As I remember, probably half, 50% or something so around this of Russians didn't know about the existence of the Union state. Well, this is a good news, and rather good news, rather good than bad news, because, well, this means that, first of all, Belarus doesn't have any such problematic places, problematic issues like Ukraine or Moldova, or you mentioned, well, Armenia, Azerbaijan or Georgia. So many post-Soviet countries do have some either conflict between themselves or conflict resulting from relationships with Russia, either Pridnestrovye or Abkhazia, Ossetia or Donbass. well, Belarus doesn't have such issues. Well, but there are also such factors that well, Belarus, unlike, for example, Ukraine, and to a great extent, unlike Moldova, doesn't aspire to become the member of the European Union. Well, and this Russian language is very strong in Belarus, and despite some alarms from chauvinistic Russian forces, generally in Russia it's perceived as friendly towards Belarus, is friendly towards Russian language and Russians in general. And also probably such strong control that Lukashenko has over the country, and no political polarization. I mean, such which would resonate in the whole society, of course.
But Belarus watered down some of Kremlin's plan with expansion or union and some other different plans Putin had in his mind, even about his re-election as Russian president for another term.
You mean his possible re-election as the president of Union State?
Yeah, there were rumors that Putin wants a union state, and then to run for presidency of the union state, which Belarus turned down, didn't agree to.
Yeah, but looks like this scenario is not actual now, because before some maybe half of a year ago, when Putin just thinking how it's possible to prolong their terms. Yeah, Belarusian and Russian political analysts talk also about this scenario, but as we see now, Putin choose is look for me more realistic option, like just simply change the constitution, as for example Lukashenko did before. So yes, I think all of these scenarios like Russia. About Russian aggression for Belarus, more of the scenarios it's based on I think it's based about on the thinking that Russia is so big and Belarus so small that Russia can do whatever Russia wants. But if it looks practically and asking about the real scenario, about how Russia can make for example, a real pro-Russian candidate on current presidential elections, what Russia can do really, and nobody from like a Russian political analyst can make a realistic answer, because on these elections we also can see some like real pro-Russian candidates, but most of them are really marginal. They have no resources, no people, no real possibility. For example, one of them, he bring documents to Central Election Commission, but he born in Russia, not in Belarus. It's against the law, so he can't register.
Yeah,
like no possibility. And this represent about a real resource of Russian candidates. So they even have not enough. Not enough persons to it. Or for example, we can see for like Russian actions in Belarus, so it's not so strong.
Okay, great. My last question, and we both are ready to answer your question if you have any. So many experts, pundits, are telling us on daily basis that the world has changed with COVID-19. Nothing will be as it used to be before the outbreak of this pandemic. What, in your opinion, will be not as was before the pandemic, and what can we expect to have after nations or states declare that COVID-19 is over. We want another Spanish, let's say, flu virus. Can I have your views, please?
So, well, this is such actual topic currently. Currently now I'm thinking about it, and by drafting an analysis on how Belarus reacted to the COVID and how the world did. Well, my opinion is that, well, the world will change slightly, but maybe a bit more than after the crisis 2009, but probably it will be lesser change than, for example, disintegration of the Soviet Union, especially the Second World War, but because many compare even to such drastic events in the past, well, this emergence of COVID. So the threat of COVID is sometimes exaggerated, well, both in terms of mortality rate and in terms of its unknownness. This is it originates from one of coronaviruses of a new type. So another thing is that the reaction, especially lockdowns, drastic lockdowns, have had many side effects. And if I think about something new, what will evolve from this experience, it may be more close consideration of cost-benefit analysis. Well, this will be a mighty contribution to cost-benefit analysis. So because this now it's appearing a very serious basis for how to evaluate things when it comes to human lives, human health on the one hand, and long-term effects of economic reductions, economic shrinking, which in some perspective may have and probably will have also impact on human health and human deaths too. So there were some simplified reactions to this pandemic, and it will most probably be needed to elaborate a more sophisticated reaction to such challenges as a pandemic is, as a pandemic created by something new, by a new virus. As new viruses will appear in the future. Well, I think most probably will appear from time to time, and I think we cannot afford to lock down economies and society's activity for months, maybe for years. We cannot afford it because it will have much worse side effects than the challenges.
Yeah.
Maybe I can add just about Belarus and about Belarusian society. If you look now about what coronavirus changed, we can look and see the rise of like a volunteering movement. People who support like first of all like hospitals or medicals, and some of these people are civil activists from previous civil campaigns. Some of them are like new people who just came for it. Somebody work as a volunteer, somebody support financially, and this campaign is like a possibility for all of them to like grouped and to find new contacts with business who also support hospitals and work with them, and even contact with government institutions. because these volunteers named by COVID-19, they work closely with the Ministry of Health, because without it you can't we can spread this all of this medical stuff. They also closely work with the Foreign Ministry, because they needed, for example, when they should bring diaspora support to Belarus with the closed borders, they should work with the Foreign Ministry. And when crises go down, so sometimes it's happen. It will be a strong volunteer community with a good linkage with the business and sometimes even with the government. And I think it will be something new for Belarusian civil society. Of course, nobody knows what's happened, and maybe government thinking how to control it or stop it or whatever. But now it's a new big deal in civil society.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate your contribution, and we believe this is just a first step in cooperation between our institutes, and we will come back to you whenever we need to get your views, your takes on developments in that part of the world. And we are ready and will be ready from now on to answer your questions, to share our experience with you. And with this, I hand the tribune to Orkhan if he has anything to say.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive interview, and we can also continue such dialogues or interviews in the future, and we can and I think we can we will have some topics. So thank you very much for taking your time.
Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure.
Invitation.
Thank you for invitation. It was very interesting and inspiring. So I hope we will get in touch in the future and maybe organize other similar talks, maybe on the Azerbaijan topics, Azerbaijan or more specific topics.
Yeah.
Because today the conversation was quite broad. Maybe we will find some specific topics. So it will be great to keep in touch and reach mutually.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy yourself. Have a nice day.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.